We'll talk about this chap here, Sir Albert Howard. I've put his name up there for you, who by happy coincidence grew up on a farm just there, just across the road. There's a big farm, and he grew up there with various brothers and sisters, and then eventually went on to become a very famous scientist. So he was born in 1873, and by 1900, say, he'd been to Cambridge University, he'd studied science, his particular interest was agriculture, and then he joined the British government, the civil service as we call it, and went overseas. He was posted overseas, so he went to the West Indies for a while, and then he went to India for quite a long time. And all this time he was supposed to be advising the Indians on agriculture, but he realised after a while that they knew a lot more about it than he did. So he kind of learned from them, and when he eventually came back to this country, he was absolutely determined to find out how soil worked, really, the relationship between soil and agriculture. And he was an excellent scientist, so he felt that you had to do your experiments actually in farm fields rather than in a research station. He said, I've been in research stations for so many years and I've learned less and less about more and more, was his famous phrase. So he started to do research actually in the field, and you can see photographs of him where he's digging big trenches down so that he can examine the roots of a crop and see what's going on in the soil. And he quickly realised that the chemical way of doing farming, although it produced a lot of food, in the long term doesn't work. It's not sustainable because you're gradually, you're growing your crops more or less in a thin layer of petrochemicals and destroying the organisms in the soil at the same time. And he was a big, back in when we're talking back in the 1930s, 1920s, a long time ago, he was on against the chemical companies who even in those days were trying to sell their products to the farmers. And particularly when the Second World War came along in the 1940s, then when there was an urgent need to grow a lot more food, the chemical companies and the government were really pushing fertilisers, and he was a staunch opponent of them. So that's his sort of story, and he became very famous around the world, and still is in parts of the world. The work that he did and the methods that he said would be good for agriculture, that we should be using, are still being followed. The only reason we know about it, we didn't know anything about this man until 2 years ago, when somebody turned up from Brazil and was looking for a statue or something that would kind of honour all the work that he was done, and was surprised that there was nothing. And he came into a history research centre we have here and said, where's the statue? Where, blah, 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 and was asking about it. Well, we knew nothing about it, we'd never heard of it. And he really probably is the most eminent, famous person to have ever grown up in Bishop's Castle. And they hold a lecture in India. Every year there's a lecture in Delhi, I think it is. And it's called the Sir Albert Howard and Mahatma Gandhi Lecture. So in Indian terms, he's up there with Mahatma Gandhi. And if you go on YouTube, you can find some of these lectures. They've been filmed, but I don't know if you know anything about Prince Charles, our Prince Charles, but he's very keen on organic farming, and he often advises it being a good, something that we should be doing. And he gave this lecture one year. You can find that on YouTube. And he talks a lot about Sir Albert Howard and how his methods are still appropriate for farming today. Anyway, so once his chap came, and then nothing much happened, and then me and 2 other people thought, well, we ought to be doing something about this chap. You know, nobody knew about him around here at all. Nobody had ever heard of him. But in a way, that's excusable because he moved when he was about 11 years old. So all his stuff that made him famous was done somewhere else. So there's no real reason why we should know. But we want to claim him back. So we've started an organisation, which is really what you want to hear about, called the Sir Albert Howard Society. And the aim is to have what we'd call a community garden to grow food. And by happy coincidence, the piece of land that we've been offered is just literally there. If you look at those trees, it's this side of those trees, just beyond the football pitch, there's a field that runs down to the road. So that's hopefully the site on which we will develop this organisation. So we're right at the beginning of doing all this. We had an email 3 days ago saying we are going to offer you the use of this field. So we've had some meetings before in the town hall. I don't know if you've been to the town hall, but we've had some meetings just to really more about the history of the man, like I've been telling you, except a bit more detailed. And we've had a lot of interest. So there were about 30 people turned up to the meeting. But whether those people are going to get involved with our community organic garden, we don't know. That's all to be developed from now on. Quite a daunting task in some ways. Now we've been allocated this piece of land, we actually have to do something, which is that's yet to be decided. So that's where we're at, really, that we've got a piece of land. We want to develop an organic community garden. The idea being that people come and work on it as volunteers and learn how to grow food, good food, hopefully fairly cheaply. And also at the same time we hope to have a workshop on site where people can come and actually do things as well, have their own sort of projects to make things or whatever, partly to do with the gardening or might be other things as well. And that's the plan. We've got to raise some money to develop all this. So we will be applying for grants. I expect your countries probably have national lotteries, do they?
No, I don't think they do actually, do they?
No, in Spain
they do in Spain.
Lotteries, don't they? Lots of lotteries.
Lottery
is confusing to me because I don't know what is lottery.
Lotto, you buy a
Lotto.
ticket and you
Oh,
know
yeah,
the price.
And you hope to win millions of...
Oh yeah. So
You have
I know
one.
what is lottery, but we can't apply for a grant.
No,
You can't
it's
get-
run
no,
as
you don't.
a commercial
Okay.
business, whereas here you get a grant from them. They'll
Oh,
give
yeah.
you a
They
grant
have to
towards the
give
community.
quite a lot of the money to community projects.
Okay.
And
I'm
Because
listening
they are
about
very
this all this
Yeah,
week.
we
and
talk-
I
yeah.
always confuse like.
Yes, because actually they are very profitable. A lot of people
Oh,
really
huge.
play,
yes.
so they return something to the society.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in Romania does not happen.
But this was
Yeah.
set up to apply for grants, so it was set up for people, and
Yeah.
so there's a sports lottery. And
People,
There's a health
people in
one.
Spain do this overall in the main lottery in Christmas, but I think it's not a really good way to
No.
finance yourself.
No,
It's
no,
like-
I'm
No.
not advocating it as a way of raising money. It's just what we have, and
Okay.
it's become a big thing in this country and lots of
Especially-
organisations get their
Yeah, to
money
start.
to start.
Okay.
They don't
Okay.
fund it forever, but if you
Okay.
need to get something started, you could get a grant for 2 or 3 years to do certain things, maybe, if you're lucky. Lots of people applying. So that's our next sort of move, really, is that we've got a constitution. I know that's one of your questions. We have to have a constitution because you have to comply with the law, and the law requires you to have a constitution if you are handling money or if you're applying for money, and you're because they're almost like public funds. They're not quite public funds, but it's very similar. So we've got a constitution, so we will become a legal entity in the eyes of the law, which will allow us to have a bank account, and that allows us to write to the people who've got lots of money and tell them that, you know, we need money for this, this and this.
Which way are you going to go? Are you going to be a community interest company? Are you going to be a company limited
Well,
by
that's
guarantee?
complicated. We don't know is the answer.
Okay.
There are different legal structures you can choose, and they all have certain advantages and certain disadvantages. And we haven't actually made that decision yet about which way we're going to go. So in fact, what we've done, we've cheated a bit for the moment. We've actually attached ourselves to another organisation that is already set up, which is the Bishop's Castle Cooperative Energy Society, I think, or something like that. And we're part of them to start with, but in a year, well, pretty soon, we'll probably have to become independent and just be ourselves. So that's the next stage, really, is to start writing a grant application, which is, because of this, this business of applying for grants has become a big part of British culture, almost. And it's almost become an industry. There are people who are specialists in writing grants and who are very good at it. Fortunately, we've got one in town, and so hopefully we're going to use her talents to... Although I did write a grant for myself for not anything to do with this, but for the tennis club. We wanted to develop something at the tennis club, and applying for small amounts of money is fairly easy. But this is going to be a bit bigger than that. So that's really where we're at. Yes, so have you got any questions?
Are you going to try and follow the kind of principles of...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to. I mean, he's written lots of books, Sir Albert. That one particularly is called The Soil and Health. I mean, he was not just interested in the soil, he was interested in the kind of food. His idea was that if you have healthy soil, you have healthy food, and then you have healthy people. And that's a logical relation. But he was kind of interested in how the people who were the farmers' health, and he was he did all sorts of things. He designed special packaging so that crops could be transported on the Indian railways, and he was very ingenious and interested in the kind of just the whole kind of process, really, of growing something and then getting it to someone who was going to eat it. And
what about your sort of the volunteers? Have you thought how that might work, of trying to coordinate groups of volunteers?
And motivate.
Yeah, and motivate.
Well, Bishop's Castle has got a lot of volunteers doing many, many different things. So somehow we've got to tap into that, which isn't so easy because people are pretty committed already.
Yeah.
But we think there is a lot of interest in a different way of farming amongst a certain segment of the population anyway. So we think we can tap into that. And part of our grant application will be for someone to be paid to kind of run the show, more or less. Probably two people doing it part-time and sharing it.
I think though you also might appeal to a different group of volunteers, mightn't you, in terms of families doing stuff together?
We want to be involved with the community college. Get them interested. Yes, it could be in the primary schools. And it'll be it's a bigger kind of enterprise.
Bigger hit range, isn't it, really? Volunteers maybe.
It's not going to be the grey volunteer. Enclave. But we don't know. And also the other aspect of it is that we'll probably get referrals from from doctors for people who need to kind of be more active and get out of their homes and meet other people. But so the sort of mental health aspect will play a part in it as well. So they can come and do things with other people.
I think though you've got opportunities once you get up and running to think about being enterprising, haven't you, in terms of, maybe selling some of the produce.
Oh, well, we're hoping
doing
to. That's part of the plan.
Yeah.
Because we used to have a weekly market here, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a monthly farmers market, but we could sell the stuff that we produce. But there's loads of people with allotments and gardens and things who always produce more than they need.
Outlet.
So if we can maybe have a market in that car park over there on a Saturday morning and sell some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those things, though, like, if you've got a bit of greenhouse space or those polytunnel type things, growing the different chilies and put them in pots, and it's just an easy thing people take home and put on the kitchen shelf, isn't it?
Yeah, those sort of things. We're going to have a polytunnel as part of the plan.
But I also think people are getting more into that, or still into that gardening thing, but there's also new people like me who tried growing things last year and thinking, oh, this is actually quite good. That you can do courses for people, you can maybe look at beekeeping, you can look at all those kind of things, and there's a charge for that kind of expertise.
We're hoping to have things that we can make money from.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly selling some of the produce and training people in certain aspects.
It's probably worth, I'm sure somebody's doing it already, but we've talked in our meetings about that kind of pre-planning. Sort of looking what else is out there, who else is trying to do some of these things.
Well, there are people around, but nothing very, very local.
Yeah.
There's
Trevor Bryn up at Better's.
Better's Cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a gardener. I came at this from a sort of historical aspect, really.
Yeah, for people with he has people from the college to the young people who are excluded from school.
Yes.
And that's quite a lucrative. I mean, I used to work and send people in Prestine. There's a guy who used to do it. But then you had all sorts of things about health and safety and child protection and all sorts of things,
Yes.
And it was, but that we paid to have the young people there, as an institution, as a school.
Yeah, well, there's all those opportunities. Yeah. I mean, we're really, only just starting to think about all the different things, really. I think we're going to start fairly simply and try and get a bit of the garden up and running.
Yeah.
So somebody local donated it to you? Somebody local has just
said...
No,
it's owned by... No, we've got to pay for it, we've got to rent it.
Yeah.
It's owned by the county council.
Right.
But it's sublet to an organisation called Enterprise Southwest, who run the IT centre.
Yeah, that's where we went this morning.
They've just been there this morning.
Oh, well, they have the lease on it.
Yeah.
So they're going to sublet a bit of it to us.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
So we heard from them last week that they
definitely had it tested, haven't you, for contamination?
We haven't done that yet, but I mean, that's all got to be done.
Please do.
Yes, that's all got to be done.
Yeah. But they,
we think probably it's not going.
No, I wouldn't have thought there probably is in this.
I mean, it was just a farm field, so it's probably
you might find there are waste dumps or something under there. You never quite know what
you don't know,
find.
I haven't got a clue. But that's all part, when we write the grant application, that will be part of the grant application that we need to have that done.
Are you going to get a board of governors? Is that your intention?
We don't know yet. At the moment, there's a core group of 3.
Yeah.
But that needs to grow.
Yeah.
That we need more than that.
Yeah.
So once at the moment we're under another organisation, but once we decide to become independent and decide what structure we're going to have, then that will be part of that decision process, really, about who else will be involved.
That's good.
But it's certainly the 3 of us don't want to be the only people doing it.
Can you think in your countries there's something similar to this kind of plan? No.
No. Is any organic farming going on?
Yes, it is, but very far from the community-based one.
Mm.
I mean, the context is different. Romania has been living into communism for 45 years.
Yeah.
What communists did was to take the land from the people and create those forced huge community lands where farmers were forced to work for very poor payments. The minute communists went out, everyone wanted the land back. And now it's very hard to make them put the land together. In agriculture, if you want to be powerful, you have to associate with others, right?
Yes.
That's been a problem of the last, I think, 15 years in Romania, convincing people to associate together. The reaction of rejection because of that imposed
association.
yeah, it was stealing the land. What the communists did, they nationalized everything.
Yeah.
So the farmer felt that they were cheated and they were, you know, misconsidered.
Yeah.
So that's why now it was very hard for them to associate. I understand that we had big problems with ensuring, for example, vegetables locally produced in local supermarkets.
Mm.
So for several years we had no local produced vegetable,
So
only imported.
Right. When people
We had
got the
apples
land
from
back-
Poland, carrots from UK, potatoes from UK, nothing produced in, I mean, or very little produced in Romania.
So when people got their land back,
Yeah,
so they just got a small.
yeah, small.
Do they not use it for anything? What
Yes,
do
they do, but they don't get profits on it. You know, they produce for their own
for
consume,
Right.
or some of them are going to the open markets and they sell individually their
Yes.
crops. And so, I think we have a recent law on this. It's not older than maybe 3 years ago. The state said that the supermarkets have to find out local producers, and they established a percent of the merchandise that is
Has to be local.
sold in, has to be local.
Right.
So this forced agricultural people to associate, because ensuring the volume of a supermarket, it's not that easy
No.
if you are small.
Yes.
So if you
Yes,
come
you have to
together,
have some-
yes.
That's
So this
right.
I understand it happened especially with vegetables.
Mm.
But it's very hard to associate, because a lot of pieces you imagine if you want a field, there are maybe certain pieces which are sold to people, to various people, which
They're
are not
really
particularly
small,
Romanian.
Really small plots.
Yeah, so it's very hard to gather together a consistent piece of land, because there are so various owners. And at the moment I understand that we have more than 10% of the cultivable land sold to people which are not from Romania.
Yeah. It's big on
For example, like Chinese people.
Yes.
Chinese.
Yeah,
Lots of British
which are
people
not
buying
which
it.
are not investing at the moment. They are just buying the land because it is very cheap,
Yes.
and expect.
Produces something like 70% of all the vegetables for Europe or something.
Yeah.
Just that small
Yeah,
region. But I presume it must be all under plastic.
Yeah.
As well.
yeah, it's in Murcia and in Almeria,
And Maria. Yeah.
Yes.
where
I've been to
is the
Almeria.
biggest, I don't know how is the plastic system in English.
Polytunnels.
Polytunnels,
Yeah.
correct.
Well, I've seen it in Spain. It's not the same. It's more like the fields have got.
Oh,
the-
just the
It's
plastic
plastic
cover.
over
Yeah.
the fields.
Yeah,
isn't it?
you see the land and
Yeah.
look like a sea of
Yes,
plastic.
yes,
Yes.
that's right.
You see it in the distance and you think it's water.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you get there and you realise it's plastic.
Sounds
Yeah.
terrible.
I think we have
It's
a
still
strong
better than growing
tradition
vegetables
in
in
maize
no soil.
cooperative
In
of
soil.
agriculture. You know, people.
I think you do, because
in
you
the
see that
south,
word a lot. Yeah.
most of people, for example, are olive oil producers. Most of the olive oil companies are not a company, are a cooperative
Yes.
with the local agriculture and owners that put together the products and choose a brand for all. When you go to the small towns and when you go to the agricultures, they have a really strong socialist background.
Yes.
Not now, because most of them now are rich, for example. But the most of them, maybe grandfathers or I don't know, was maybe anarchists, socialists. So people who defend the land and have a lot of another way of how should be a business in this way. But overall, in agriculture, I think is the most stronger form how people.
Would that be true of Almeria? That area would still be working under a cooperative, even though it's a huge agribusiness in many ways, isn't it? It's going on.
I think this is different. It's a different. They are, I think, land owners, and I think you can find people who sell to a distribution company. You know,
a middleman.
The middleman. Or some of them are in cooperative too.
Right.
But depend. For example, in Huelva, we produce, I think, all or the 90% of the strawberries, blackberries, and this to UK, France, and this. And most of these companies are cooperative too, and are really strong. For me, I have a friend who started, I don't know, 3 months ago to work in a big transportation company, you know, who take all the strawberries and this and take to UK, France and Belgium or something like this. And was surprised for me to know how big are the companies and how big are the cooperative. So like, because if you go there, you only see the plastics and you see a lot of immigrants working through the roads, and you don't think that it's a really rich business. I don't know. And when he told me, I don't know, we have 500 trucks moving.
It's a big company. A lot of
moving, and we had to open another center in the Basque Country because we are sending to Poland. I don't know. I was like, what are you talking about? It was crazy for me.
There was a shortage of vegetables a few weeks ago here, and that was when I read this because it was said that the weather in Murcia had been so poor for a month or something. That
we had no courgettes. That was the one that was really important. There was no spiralite. That's the latest thing. Courgette spaghetti. Courgette. There was none in the supermarket. So and then that's when I read that something like 70% of all the vegetables in Europe come from this one part of Spain, which is
for example, oranges. Oranges is famous from Valencia, but most of the Valencia oranges are bought in Sevilla, for example. But Valencia have the money to produce the brand, you know, and it's few times it's the same with the olive oil. The brand is from Italy. It's like all people around the world know that the olive oil is from Italy. But the truth is that most of the original olive oil are bought in Jaén. That is the biggest product. So you are to the man in the middle. Finally, you know, it's always Yeah, and it's for me. I started last year. I knew the date of the data. I don't know that the Sevilla is the main producer of rice in the world. In the world, I knew that we have a plant or I don't know agriculture, and I knew, and I knew that we have big extension of land, but the first, if you think in rice, you think in China. Come on,
Japan,
not the south of Spain. I was like, oh,
no, that's interesting. But that, I mean, just all of what you're saying there is in complete contrast to the idea that we have here of transition towns.
Mm-hmm.
Where you try and grow your food locally to avoid the 500 trucks coming from wherever. The idea being that you try and cut down your transport miles.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you hear this, you think,
But
how is that going to work?
buying them, aren't we? You know, strawberries in January in Sainsbury's or Tesco, we're buying them, aren't we?
Yeah.
And it's wrong, but we do it.
But we have the possibility of go to the towns around the city and buy directly.
You can buy local produce in your
this
markets.
is the best way to buy, really, because it's cheap, because it's not the middleman or the man in the middle, and usually are organic producer. You know, it's not using chemicals and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
which is what
this is a good option.
What will be the wish list then, Trevor, if we end on that? How over the next 2 years, 3 years? If we came back in 3 years, what are we going to
hopefully
see?
You'll see a polytunnel, you'll see lots of beds of stuff growing, and a workshop of some kind where people are in there making things or doing things or whatever. I'm not quite sure what yet. That would be, but...
And really involving all ages of the community as well, I think. That
absolutely,
Mental health stuff as well.
Yeah,
Like you said.
mental health stuff and, whatever, social inclusion, really. That it would be open to anyone who wants to turn up and, take part on a small scale or, being, just making the team.
Important role.
Very important.